He bled for the alien princess. Now the queen refuses to let him go HFY. The air was thick with dust, and the sun burned like a white-hot knife through the thin atmosphere. Ethan and his small trade escort were moving slowly across the desert canyon when the first attack came. Explosions tore the silence apart. Alien raiders dropped from the sky in strange ships that shimmered like liquid metal. Their weapons fired beams of light that cut through the air and shattered rock. Ethan shouted orders, but the chaos was immediate. Men and women of his unit scattered, some fleeing, others trying to fight back. In the middle of the turmoil, Ethan saw a flash of movement near the canyon edge. It was her, the alien Princess Liara. She was small, with pale blue skin that almost glowed in the dust. Her eyes were wide and golden, filled with fear, but also something else, intelligence and strength that seemed far beyond her age. She tried to run, but one of the raiders spotted her and raised a weapon. Before she could scream, Ethan dove in front of her. The beam hit him in the shoulder. Pain tore through his body, but he gritted his teeth and pushed her behind a rock. "Get out of here," he yelled. "Run, now." Liara hesitated. She wanted to obey, but she saw the blood spreading across Ethan's tunic. He was wounded badly, yet his stance was firm. He looked at her not with fear, but with determination. She realized in that moment that the human would not let her die, not for any reward, not for any command, just because it was right. The raiders advanced. Ethan fired his weapon with steady hands, each shot precise. He moved with a calm that surprised even himself. Every movement was deliberate, each step measured against the deadly storm of energy blasts. But he was outnumbered. He knew it. He could feel his strength leaving him, and the world was starting to blur at the edges. Still, he did not retreat. Liara found herself ducking behind the rock beside him. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Why help me?" Ethan did not answer at first. He was too busy keeping the raiders at bay. Then in a low, pained voice he said, "Because if I don't, you die, and I can't let that happen." The words were simple, but in them lay something deeper. Liara felt a strange warmth in her chest. Humans were supposed to be weak, fragile creatures. They were not supposed to stand against fear in the way she saw now, and yet here was one, bleeding, wounded, yet unbroken. The raiders closed in. Ethan fired until his weapon was empty, then dropped it and drew a small blade. He moved with precision, each strike defending not only himself but the princess. His muscles screamed and his vision blurred, but he did not falter. The world was only him and her now. Everything else could wait. One of the raiders lunged at Liara while Ethan was distracted. Without thinking, he pushed forward and took the hit meant for her. Pain exploded in his side, and he stumbled, but the princess was safe. She gasped and realized the cost of his protection. His blood soaked the sand, and yet he pushed her toward a narrow crevice that led away from the attackers. "Go," he ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. "Now run." Liara ran without looking back. Tears blurred her vision, but she did not stop. She could hear the raiders shouting, the clash of metal and energy, but she kept moving. She reached the edge of the canyon and looked back once. Ethan was still standing, still fighting, still holding them off. She swallowed a sob and kept going. Minutes passed like hours. Finally, the raiders pulled back, confused by the human who had refused to die. They had expected him to fall, as all humans did when wounded. But Ethan Cole had bled freely, had ignored pain, and had protected someone else at the cost of his own life. They did not understand it, and their confusion bought him precious moments. The royal guards arrived too late. The queen's personal escort had been watching from a distance, monitoring the raid. When they reached Ethan, he was barely conscious, his body battered, his uniform soaked with blood. Liara ran to him, her small hands shaking as she knelt beside him. "You saved me," she whispered. "You really saved me." Ethan tried to smile, but it was weak. His breathing was shallow and his eyes fluttered. "I couldn't let them hurt you," he said. The words were almost gone, carried by the dust and heat of the desert. The queen observed from a hover platform above, her face cold and unreadable. She had expected humans to be brave in small ways, but not like this. Not to throw themselves into death to protect someone else. Her lips pressed together as she studied him. There was something in this human, something dangerous to her people. The guards lifted Ethan carefully and carried him to a transport. Liara followed, holding onto the side of the platform. She refused to leave his side, even as medics worked to stabilize him. The human's life was fragile, but in his actions he had proven something remarkable. He had shown the value of human life not through commands or strength, but through choice. As the transport lifted from the desert, the Queen gave a silent order. No one was to interfere with the human. He had earned her attention, and she would decide what to do with him. The court murmured in confusion. A human, a weak creature? Why did the Queen care so much? But no one dared question her. The choice had been made. Ethan slipped in and out of consciousness. He dreamed of blue skies and golden eyes, of warmth and danger, of a life he had never thought to save. Liara stayed beside him, whispering strange words from her language, trying to comfort him. He gripped her hand weakly, feeling a bond form that neither of them could name yet. It was not love, not yet, but something equally powerful, a connection forged in blood and courage. The journey back to the palace was long and harsh. The desert stretched endlessly and the transport rocked with the wind. Ethan's body was weak, but his mind was clear enough to see the fear and awe in the guards' eyes. They had never seen a human act like this, and they did not know what to make of it. He had done what no alien could understand. He had bled to save someone else, and in doing so, he had changed the way they saw humans forever. When they reached the palace, Ethan was carried into the healing chambers. The alien doctors frowned at his injuries. They had medicine capable of incredible feats, yet the human's body defied expectation. He had lost too much blood, and yet he still lived. They whispered to each other in alarm, noting the strength and resilience that seemed impossible for his species. Liara stayed close, refusing to leave him alone, holding his hand and murmuring softly. The Queen finally descended from her observation platform. She looked at Ethan with a strange expression, part curiosity, part calculation. He had survived where most humans would have died. He had protected her daughter with no thought of reward. The laws of her people demanded acknowledgement of such acts. A debt had been formed, a debt paid in blood, and it was sacred. Ethan drifted into sleep, exhausted and in pain. He did not know what awaited him in the palace. He only knew that he had done what he had to do. The human who bled for an alien princess had proven one thing already. Humans were unpredictable, and sometimes they could be the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy, not because of weapons, but because of courage that no alien could measure. Liara leaned over him and whispered, "Thank you, Ethan Cole. I don't know how to repay you." He smiled faintly, his eyes barely open. "You don't need to," he said, "just live." And in that moment, a bond was born, one that would ripple across stars and empires, a simple act of bravery that would echo far beyond the desert sands of Jira. The Queen watched silently, knowing that this human was unlike any she had ever seen, and that his presence would change her world forever. Ethan Cole woke slowly. The room around him was bright, almost painfully so, and the air smelled of strange herbs and antiseptic. He could feel the bandages on his arms and torso, but the pain was less sharp than before. He tried to sit up, but a soft hand pressed gently on his chest. "Don't move too fast," Liara said. Her golden eyes were full of worry. "You almost didn't make it." Ethan looked at her, his throat dry. "I'm okay," he said, though his voice was weak. "Mostly." Liara shook her head. "Mostly isn't good enough. You could have died, Ethan. You bled so much." He tried to smile. I had to protect you," she frowned. "That is not enough to explain why you are alive. The doctors said your body should have given up hours ago. No human survives like this." Ethan felt a strange pride mixed with confusion. He had survived, yes, but he did not understand why it seemed to astonish them so much. "I don't know," he said. "I guess I didn't think about dying, I just acted." Liara studied him closely. "Humans are strange," she whispered. "Sometimes they do things without fear, without reason, and it changes everything." Just then, the doors to the chamber opened. Two of the Queen's guards entered, tall and imposing, carrying themselves with the kind of discipline that made humans feel small. They stopped when they saw Ethan awake. One of them, a female named Orlina, tilted her head. "He lives?" she asked, her voice low. "He does," Liara said, "but I do not know how." Orlina glanced at the bandages and the blood-soaked sheets. "He should be dead. The elders will want to see him." Ethan tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. He realized he was being watched not just by guards, but by the presence of the Queen herself. The Queen did not enter the room yet, but Ethan could feel her eyes. They were cold and calculating, as if measuring his value, weighing his actions, and deciding what to do next. Hours passed. Alien doctors worked tirelessly, mixing potions and activating strange devices that glowed with light. They murmured among themselves, amazed that the human's heart kept beating. They noted the resilience in his body, the way he healed faster than they expected, and the stubbornness in his mind. He was a human, yes, but one who refused to die. Liara stayed with him the entire time. She brought him water in small sips, helped him shift position, and whispered words of encouragement. Ethan found comfort in her presence, even as his mind was foggy with pain and fatigue. There was a bond forming between them, one that neither fully understood yet. It was quiet, simple, and unspoken, but it was there, strong and real. Finally, the queen arrived. She entered the room slowly, her long robes flowing behind her. Her face was pale blue like Liara's, but with an age and authority that could not be hidden. She studied Ethan, her eyes narrowing as if trying to see into his very soul. "Human," she said, her voice calm but firm, "you are alive." Yes," Ethan said, still weak but trying to sit up straighter, "thanks to the princess." The queen's gaze shifted to Liara. "You are safe thanks to this one?" Liara nodded. "He saved me. He protected me even though he was hurt, even though he could have died." The queen studied Ethan again. She leaned on her staff and circled him slowly, her golden eyes sharp and precise. "Humans are fragile," she said. "Most die easily, yet you survived wounds that would have ended life immediately. You acted with courage and without fear. Why?" Ethan thought for a moment. He was tired, sore, and weak, but he wanted to answer honestly. "Because it was right," he said simply. "I didn't think about what I'd get. I didn't think about dying. I just did it." The queen paused. No one spoke for a long moment. The silence was heavy and full of meaning. Then she spoke again. "A debt has been formed. A debt paid in blood. In my culture, such a debt is sacred. By saving my daughter, you have bound yourself to us." Ethan blinked, confused. "Bound myself?" he asked. I didn't want anything. I just—" "Words do not matter here," the queen said. "Your actions have meaning. You will remain under royal protection. You will not return to your people until this debt is resolved." Liara gasped. "You can't do that. He should go home. He's human." The queen shook her head. "Humans act in ways we do not understand. They are dangerous, unpredictable, and sometimes noble beyond measure. This human has proven himself. He will stay, and we will see what he becomes." Ethan's mind raced. He wanted to protest, wanted to argue, but his body was too weak and his mind too foggy. He realized he had no choice. He could not return to his unit, to his home, or to safety. He was under alien rule in a palace full of strangers, and the queen had made her decision. Days passed. Ethan's body slowly recovered, though he remained weak. The alien doctors were fascinated by him, taking notes and running tests. He had an endurance and strength that no human was supposed to have. He healed faster than expected, and he refused to let them pamper him unnecessarily. He wanted to stand to train, to be ready if danger came again. Liara stayed by his side, teaching him small things about her culture. She showed him how to eat their food, how to speak some of their language, and how to move with grace that was expected in the palace. Ethan listened, learning quickly, though he struggled with some of the customs. He could not hide his human awkwardness, and Liara laughed at his clumsy attempts. Yet beneath the laughter, there was a bond growing stronger. Ethan admired her courage and intelligence, her ability to command respect despite her youth. Liara admired his bravery and stubbornness, the way he refused to give up even when the odds were impossible. They were different from different worlds, yet they understood each other in ways that few could. The court began to talk about him. Some nobles whispered with respect, amazed that a human could survive such injuries and act with such courage. Others were skeptical, seeing him as a fragile creature who should have died long ago. The queen, however, paid little attention to gossip. She observed him silently, measuring his spirit, and noting the way he carried himself even in weakness. One afternoon, the queen summoned Ethan to her chambers. He stood carefully, still sore from recent injuries, and followed her through long halls filled with alien art and technology. The queen's room was large and cold, but filled with light that made Ethan squint. She motioned for him to sit. "You are remarkable," she said. "Not for your strength, not for your weapons, but for your choice. Most humans fight for orders or fear. You fought for another being with no command and no thought of reward. This is rare." Ethan nodded slowly. "I just did what felt right," he said. "I couldn't let her die. I couldn't." The queen studied him for a long time. "Your choice has bound you to us. It is a sacred bond, one we do not break lightly. You will remain here, learning, serving, and proving your worth." Your people may demand your return, but I will not release you yet. You belong here now, in part because of your actions and in part because I see potential in you." Ethan swallowed. He wanted to argue, to insist he was just a human, just a soldier, just someone who had acted without thinking. But he realized the Queen was not asking for obedience in words. She wanted something deeper, proof of character, proof of courage, proof that he could stand in a world that was not his own and survive. He nodded. "I understand," he said. "I'll do my best." Liara watched from the doorway, her hands clasped together. She did not speak, but her expression was full of relief and pride. Ethan had survived, yes, but he had also earned her respect, and in turn, she had begun to trust him completely. The days that followed were filled with training and observation. Ethan learned about the alien culture, their technology, their politics, and their history. He struggled with the complexity of it all, but he also learned to rely on his instincts, on his courage, and on the bond he had formed with Liara. The Queen continued to watch. She tested him subtly, sending small challenges, observing how he reacted under pressure. Each time, Ethan acted with courage and honesty, never seeking reward, never hiding fear, never pretending to be more than he was. Slowly, the Queen's cold gaze softened. She began to see the value in humans, the potential for strength beyond what her people had imagined. And through it all, the bond between Ethan and Liara grew stronger. They spoke in whispers, shared meals, and trained together. He learned her language, she learned some of his, and together they began to understand that courage and loyalty were universal, crossing species, planets, and customs. The court continued to murmur. Humans were unpredictable, strange, and dangerous. Yet here was one, standing tall in their world, earning respect, and changing the way they thought of his species. The Queen had made her decision, and the galaxy would take notice soon enough. Ethan Cole had survived. He had bled for the princess. And now, under the Queen's watchful eye, he would begin to prove that humans were not just fragile creatures. They were strong, unyielding, and capable of remarkable courage that even the oldest empires could not ignore. Ethan Cole was becoming more accustomed to life in the alien palace, though it was still strange and sometimes overwhelming. The halls were tall and smooth, filled with shimmering light and soft hums of unknown machinery. Alien nobles walked past with curious eyes, whispering to each other as Ethan passed. Some looked at him with respect, others with disbelief. A human, they murmured, surviving wounds that should have killed him, and now walking among them like he belonged. Liara was always near him. She moved with grace, guiding him through customs and teachings, correcting his mistakes gently. "Your human ways are blunt," she said one morning as they trained in the courtyard, "but sometimes that is refreshing." Ethan smiled despite the soreness in his muscles. "I'll take that as a compliment," she laughed softly. "It is, you are different and the Queen notices. Be careful, though, not all of them will welcome you." The Queen, as always, watched from a distance. She had begun to see Ethan as more than just a human who saved her daughter. He was a symbol, a living example of courage, choice, and resilience. She had invited him to private lessons, testing his mind and his spirit. She asked questions that made him think, questions about loyalty, fear, and what it meant to be human. Ethan answered honestly, never trying to impress her, never hiding who he was. One afternoon, the Queen brought him to a quiet chamber filled with ancient artifacts. She pointed to a small crystalline orb that glowed faintly. "This is a test," she said. "You must tell me what you see, not what I expect, but what you truly feel." Ethan examined the orb. It was beautiful, delicate, yet strong. He could see light shifting inside, moving unpredictably. "I see something alive," he said finally. "Something that can change, but also something that can endure. It is fragile but strong." The Queen's eyes narrowed. She did not smile, but there was a hint of approval. "You observe without fear," she said. "You understand the balance of life and danger. Most humans cannot. Most humans are blinded by self-preservation." Ethan nodded, unsure if he was supposed to say more. I just look," he said. "I don't try to control it, I just see it." The Queen studied him for a long moment. "Then you understand something important. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is action despite fear. You have demonstrated this more than once." "Yet I wonder, would you do it again if the cost were greater?" Ethan felt the weight of the question. He thought of the desert, the blood, the raiders, and Liara's golden eyes. I don't know," he admitted. "But I know that if she were in danger, I would try. No matter what it cost." The queen said nothing more, leaving him to ponder her words. Ethan understood that she was testing him, shaping him. She was not only the ruler of this world, but also a careful observer, watching humans as if they were a puzzle to solve. And Ethan was part of that puzzle now, whether he wanted it or not. Weeks passed, and palace life continued. Ethan learned the alien language more fluently, though some words and concepts were still difficult. He learned about their history, the wars they had fought, and the fragile alliances that held their empire together. He was invited to councils, not as a participant, but as an observer. The nobles debated fiercely, and Ethan realized that power here was complex, built on respect, fear, and tradition. Then came the first test of his loyalty. One morning, Liara ran to him in a panic. "They are coming," she said, her voice trembling. "Assassins. They want the queen, and they do not care about the human." Ethan's heart raced. "How many?" he asked. "I do not know," she said, "but we have no time. Follow me." They ran through secret corridors known only to the royal family. The palace was large, but Liara moved with confidence, guiding Ethan past guards and hidden doors. They emerged into a chamber where the queen was already standing, calm and composed despite the chaos outside. Her eyes were sharp as ever. "Human," she said. "Your courage will be tested." Ethan looked at her, unsure what she meant. Then the doors burst open and shadows moved inside the chamber. Alien assassins, armed and deadly, surged forward. Ethan did not hesitate. He stepped in front of Liara and the queen, drawing his weapon. His body was still recovering from previous injuries, but he felt no fear, only determination. The fight was brutal. Ethan moved with precision, every action deliberate. He blocked strikes, deflected attacks, and protected Liara at every turn. The assassins were skilled, but Ethan's human unpredictability made him difficult to read. He fought not just with strength, but with instinct, with the same courage that had saved Liara in the desert. Liara joined him, using her own training to assist. Together they formed a strange but effective team. The queen watched, her eyes narrowing. She had expected bravery, yes, but not this combination of human instinct and alien skill. The assassins faltered, confused by the humans' unyielding defense. Ethan felt a sharp pain as one of the attackers struck him in the side. He gritted his teeth, ignoring it, and countered with a precise strike that sent the attacker crashing to the floor. He could feel his energy fading, but he refused to let go. Liara moved beside him, supporting him, and together they pushed the remaining assassins back until they fled, unable to match the strange courage and coordination of human and princess. When the fight was over, the queen approached him. Her expression was unreadable, but there was something in her eyes that surprised Ethan approval. "You have proven yourself," she said. "Not once, but again. Your courage is undeniable and your loyalty remarkable. You are not just a human who survived. You are a human who protects, who chooses, and who endures. This changes how I see you." Ethan, breathing heavily, looked at her. "I did what I had to," he said. "I couldn't let them hurt her, or you." The queen nodded. "Then you understand what binds you here. Your actions have consequences beyond yourself. You are not free to leave, not because you are a prisoner, but because your presence now matters. To me, to Liara, and to the balance of this court." Liara stepped closer to him, her hand brushing his arm. "You did it again," she whispered. "You risked yourself for me, for all of us. I don't know how to thank you." Ethan shook his head. "You don't need to thank me," he said. "I just want to keep you safe, that's all that matters." The queen studied them silently, then spoke again. "Humans are unpredictable, and yet they can be noble in ways we do not fully understand. You are an example of this. The court will take notice. Alliances may shift, enemies may hesitate, and your species will be seen differently because of you." Ethan felt a mixture of pride and unease. He had not acted to impress anyone, yet here he was, a symbol of human courage in a world that did not fully understand it. He wondered if he could live up to the expectations now forming around him. In the days that followed, the court reacted to the events. Some aliens whispered admiration, impressed that a human could defend a princess and survive against trained assassins. Others were wary, unsettled by the notion that one human could hold such courage and skill. The queen, however, remained silent, observing, calculating, and planning. She understood that Ethan's presence was more than symbolic. It was a shift, a subtle but powerful change in the balance of power. Ethan continued to train with Liara, learning not just combat but strategy and diplomacy. He learned how to anticipate attacks, how to move through dangerous situations, and how to think beyond his human instincts. The Queen watched these sessions closely, occasionally offering a comment or correction. She was shaping him, preparing him for challenges that no human had faced before. One evening, as they rested in the training courtyard, Liara turned to him. "Do you ever think about going home?" she asked. Ethan shook his head. "I can't," he admitted. "Not yet." "Not while you are in danger, not while there is work to do here," she smiled faintly. "You are strange, human. Most would run, most would hide. You stay, and not because you must, but because you choose to. That is remarkable." Ethan looked at her, tired but resolute. "I stay because it matters," he said. "Because courage is not just for me, it's for those who need it." The Queen, watching from a balcony above, nodded silently. She had seen enough. This human had proven himself beyond words, beyond expectation. He had survived death, protected the princess, and now stood as a living example of human determination. The galaxy would notice him, and through him they would notice humanity. And Ethan Cole, bleeding and exhausted, knew that his life had changed forever. He was no longer just a soldier, no longer just a human from a distant world. He was a protector, a symbol, and a force that even the oldest empire could not ignore. The test had passed. The real journey was only beginning. Life in the palace had changed for Ethan Cole. He was no longer just a guest or a visitor. He was a symbol of courage, a human who had bled for the alien princess and survived. Nobles and guards alike watched him with curiosity, awe, and sometimes suspicion. Rumors spread quietly through the halls, whispers of the human who refused to die, the human who defended the princess against all odds. Liara stayed close, guiding him through the complex social world of the palace. She taught him how to bow correctly, how to address the queen and the nobles, and how to navigate conversations that could carry hidden threats. Ethan learned quickly, though he sometimes stumbled over words or misunderstood alien customs. Liara laughed at his mistakes but gently corrected him. "You are improving," she said one afternoon as they walked through the palace gardens. "Soon, the nobles may respect you, not just because of the queen, but because of yourself." Ethan looked at her, smiling despite his fatigue. "I hope so. I don't want to just survive here. I want to be able to help if things go wrong again." The queen, observing from a distance, was silent but thoughtful. She had seen Ethan grow not just physically, but mentally. He had faced danger without hesitation, protected Liara, and learned quickly about alien culture. She realized that he was becoming more than a human who had saved a princess. He was becoming a participant in the empire, a factor in the delicate balance of power. Then one morning, a warning arrived. Scouts had detected a small fleet of warships moving toward the system. Rival alien factions, displeased with the Queen's rule, were preparing an attack. The palace erupted in activity. Alarms rang, guards ran to positions, and the Queen called for a council. Ethan was summoned, along with Liara, to observe the meeting. The room was filled with alien leaders, their faces tense and worried. Maps of the galaxy floated in midair, showing the movement of ships and forces. The Queen pointed to the incoming fleet. "They underestimate our strength," she said, her voice steady. "They do not understand the loyalty and courage of those who serve this empire. Nor do they understand the humans among us." One of the alien nobles spoke, his voice sharp and concerned. "Your Majesty, this human, he is not one of us. Should he be involved in defense, he may be a liability." The Queen's eyes narrowed. "He is no liability. He has proven himself twice now. He understands courage, loyalty, and sacrifice in a way few can. He will be part of the defense, not because I order it, but because he chooses it." Ethan felt a mix of pride and anxiety. He was still a human, still fragile compared to the alien soldiers around him. Yet he had survived impossible wounds and had defended Liara with everything he had. Now he was being called upon again, this time not for a single fight, but for the safety of the empire itself. Preparations began immediately. Ethan trained alongside alien soldiers, learning how to fight in formation, how to use advanced weapons, and how to anticipate enemy tactics. He moved with agility and focus, his human instincts allowing him to adapt in ways the aliens could not predict. Liara stayed nearby, supporting him, offering advice, and helping him understand the strategy of the Empire. The Queen watched silently, impressed by Ethan's determination and adaptability. She knew that his presence alone would shift the balance. Enemies would hesitate, nobles would reconsider, and allies would be inspired by the courage of a human who refused to die. As the fleet approached, scouts reported that the enemy was unaware of Ethan's presence. The Queen made a bold decision. She declared that harming the human would be an act of war, placing him under her personal claim. The announcement spread quickly. Alien leaders whispered in shock and confusion. One human, a single soldier, could now influence the actions of an entire empire. The first encounter came suddenly. Small skirmish ships moved into the outer orbit, testing defenses. Ethan, positioned on the front lines with a squad of alien soldiers, moved quickly to intercept. The aliens around him were skilled, but their movements were rigid, predictable. Ethan adapted, using speed, timing, and intuition to strike effectively, often saving entire squads from harm. Liara watched from the command platform, her eyes wide with concern and admiration. She had never seen a human act like this, not just surviving danger, but actively changing the outcome of a battle. Ethan moved like a force of nature, unafraid, precise, and relentless. The enemy fleet was larger than expected. They began targeting the palace directly, trying to break the Queen's rule. Ethan and the soldiers fought fiercely, holding the line while reinforcements arrived. Explosions lit the sky, beams of energy cut through space, and debris floated in the vacuum. Ethan's body was pushed to the limit, his muscles aching, his wounds from the past still healing, but he refused to stop. During a critical moment, a bomb was dropped near a group of alien soldiers. Without hesitation, Ethan ran through the danger, pulling them out of harm's way. The blast hit him partially, throwing him against the ground. Pain tore through him, but he forced himself up, shielding Liara and others nearby. The Queen observed in silence, her expression unreadable. She had seen bravery before, yes, but not like this. Ethan was not only surviving, he was shaping the battle, inspiring loyalty and courage in those around him. She realized that humans, fragile as they seemed, could wield influence far beyond their size or strength. After hours of fighting, the enemy retreated. Their forces were scattered, their morale broken by the unexpected ferocity and courage of the humans and the Queen's loyal soldiers. The palace was safe, though damaged, and the Queen called for a moment of rest and reflection. Ethan, exhausted and bleeding slightly from new injuries, stood beside Liara. She helped him to a chair, her hands steady and caring. "You did it," she said softly. "You saved them all again." Ethan shook his head, trying to catch his breath. "I just did what needed to be done," he said. "I didn't think about glory or praise or anything else. I just acted." Liara looked at him, her golden eyes bright. "That is what makes you extraordinary. Humans are supposed to be weak, afraid, and fragile. Yet you are strong, not just in body, but in spirit. You fight not because you are commanded, but because you choose to. That is rare." The Queen approached, her eyes calm but full of meaning. "You understand now why you remain here," she said. "Not as a prisoner, but as an honored ally. Your presence has changed the course of this battle, and perhaps the course of the Empire itself. Humans are unpredictable, and through you, we see that they are capable of courage and loyalty beyond measure." Ethan nodded, feeling a weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He had always acted out of instinct and duty, but now he realized that his choices had consequences far beyond himself. He was a human, yes, but he was also a symbol, a living example of bravery and selflessness in a galaxy that had never expected it. In the days that followed, the palace repaired itself, soldiers trained, and the Queen strengthened her alliances. Ethan continued to serve, not out of obligation, but because he believed in the protection of those who had become his friends and allies. Nobles began to respect him, and some even sought his counsel, curious about the human who had bled for a princess and survived. Liara spent more time with him, learning about human ways and sharing her own culture. They spoke of life, of duty, and of the strange bond that had formed between them. Ethan realized that this bond was no longer just about protection. It was about trust, understanding, and a shared courage that crossed species and worlds. The Queen continued to observe. She knew that humans were dangerous not because of weapons, but because of their spirit. Ethan had proven that one human could influence entire events, change perceptions, and inspire courage. She had refused to release him to his people, not out of ownership, but out of recognition that his presence here mattered. And Ethan, though still recovering from old wounds and facing new challenges, understood that he had found a purpose greater than survival. He had become a protector, a symbol, and a force that even the oldest empires could not ignore. Through courage, choice, and loyalty, he had shown that humans were unyielding, even in a galaxy that had not expected it. The Empire had learned a new lesson. To underestimate a human was to risk everything. And Ethan Cole, bleeding and unbroken, would continue to teach that lesson every day the palace had settled into a fragile calm. The enemy fleet had retreated, the palace repairs were underway, and the Queen's alliances were strengthening. Yet for Ethan Cole, life was still far from simple. He moved through the halls with quiet purpose, still learning the ways of this alien empire, still training alongside soldiers who watched him with a mix of awe and caution. He was no longer just a human who had saved a princess. He was a symbol, a presence that the Empire could not ignore. Liara stayed near him constantly. She had grown in confidence, no longer the frightened princess who had fled across the desert. She walked taller, spoke clearly, and carried herself with authority. Yet in private moments, she showed vulnerability, trusting Ethan in ways she trusted no one else. "Do you ever think about leaving?" she asked one evening as they walked through the palace gardens. The twin moons hung low in the sky, casting silver light over the blossoms and stone paths. Ethan shook his head. "Not really. I thought I would want to go home to Earth after everything, but now I don't know. I can't just leave, not when things here could go wrong." She looked at him, her golden eyes reflecting the moons. "You've changed this place, not just by fighting, but by being yourself. Humans are strange to us, unpredictable, and yet you've shown us courage that we could not have imagined. You've earned our respect." Ethan felt a warmth in his chest. He had acted without thought of reward, without expectation, and yet here he was, being recognized for what he had done. It was strange, almost surreal, but he understood now that his choices mattered far beyond himself. The Queen summoned him soon after. She spoke with a gravity that made the entire chamber feel tense. "Ethan Cole," she said, her voice calm but firm, "you have proven yourself beyond what I could have expected. You have protected my daughter, defended my palace, and shown courage that even my most loyal guards do not always possess. You are free to return to your people if you wish. The choice is yours." Ethan hesitated. Freedom. The word was heavy. He had fought, survived, and trained. He had seen the palace under attack. He had defended lives. He had formed bonds. Leaving now would feel like abandoning all of it. Yet returning home to humanity would bring comfort, familiarity, and safety. He looked at Liara, who stood silently, her expression unreadable. I don't think I can leave," he said finally. "Not yet. Not while danger exists, not while there is still work to do, and not while I can help." The Queen's eyes narrowed slightly, a hint of approval in her gaze. "Then you choose to stay," she said. "Not because you are bound by blood debt or by command, but because you understand duty, loyalty, and courage. This is rare among humans." Liara stepped closer, taking his hand gently. "I am glad," she said softly. "You've stayed not because you were told to, but because it was your choice. That is the greatest courage of all." Ethan squeezed her hand, a quiet understanding passing between them. He had acted before without thinking of reward, but now he understood that his choice had meaning, shaping the lives of others, the safety of the Empire, and even the perception of humans across the galaxy. Days turned into weeks. Ethan continued to train, teach, and assist in palace defense. He learned more about alien strategy, diplomacy, and history. He advised nobles on matters of defense, using his instincts and human perspective to provide insights that often surprised the council. His presence changed discussions, inspired courage, and created respect that had not existed before. One morning, a messenger arrived with urgent news. A small faction of rival nobles, unhappy with the Queen's rule, had attempted to mobilize forces against the palace. Their fleet was small, but they were determined and their strategy clever. The Queen called for a council, and Ethan was invited to speak. He studied the maps, the positions of the enemy, and the palace defenses. He thought carefully not just about strategy, but about human instinct and unpredictability. When he spoke, his voice was calm but firm. "They expect predictable moves," he said. "We need to do the opposite, use their assumptions against them. They will hesitate if we act in a way they cannot anticipate." The nobles murmured, impressed by his insight. The Queen nodded. "Then it is settled, we follow the humans' counsel." The battle was tense. The rival forces approached, confident in their plan. Yet Ethan's strategies worked. Small teams moved unpredictably, using deception and timing to outmaneuver the enemy. Alien soldiers fought with skill, but it was Ethan's insight, his human intuition, that shifted the tide. The enemy fleet faltered, confusion spreading through their ranks. In the middle of the battle, Ethan noticed a young soldier trapped beneath debris after a small explosion. Without hesitation, he ran into the danger, lifting the heavy metal and saving the alien. The soldier looked at him in shock. Why risk yourself?" the soldier asked. Ethan smiled faintly. "Because it's right," he said simply. "We protect those who cannot protect themselves." The enemy, seeing the unexpected courage and human tactics, faltered further. They retreated, unable to overcome the combination of alien strength and human unpredictability. The palace was safe, the queen's rule secured, and once again Ethan had proven his worth, not just as a fighter but as a symbol of courage and loyalty. After the battle, the queen addressed the court. "Humans are often underestimated," she said. "Yet one human has changed the course of events multiple times. Ethan Cole has shown us that courage, loyalty, and choice can shape worlds. He is not only a protector, but an example to all of us." Ethan felt a mixture of pride and humility. He had acted not for glory, not for recognition, but because it was right. Yet here he was, being acknowledged for actions he had taken instinctively. He realized that his courage had consequences far beyond himself, changing the lives of aliens, the fate of the palace, and even the perception of humans across the galaxy. Later, in the quiet of the palace gardens, Liara turned to him. "You could have returned to your people," she said. "You chose to stay. Why?" Ethan looked at her, thinking of the battles, the palace, and the bonds he had formed. "I stay because it matters," he said, "because courage is not just for me. It's for those who need it and for those who trust me. Leaving now would be wrong." Liara smiled, understanding. "Then you are truly human," she said. "Not just because of your species, but because of your heart, your choice, and your courage. You are a part of this world now, in a way that matters." The queen, observing from a balcony above, nodded silently. She had learned something new about humans, about their unpredictability and strength. Through Ethan Cole, she had seen that humans were dangerous not because of weapons or numbers, but because of courage, choice, and loyalty. They were capable of acts that could shape entire worlds, change empires, and challenge expectations. And Ethan, still weary and scarred from past battles, understood that his journey was far from over. Yet he was no longer the human who had fled across the desert to save a princess. He was a protector, a symbol, and a force that even the oldest empire could not ignore. Through courage, choice, and loyalty, he had proven that humans were unyielding, even in a galaxy that had not expected it. The palace, the queen, and Liara all depended on him, and he did not shy away from that responsibility. He had learned that true courage was not measured in survival alone, but in the willingness to act, to protect, and to endure for others. He had bled for the princess, and now, through his choices, he had reshaped the Empire's view of humanity forever. And as the twin moons rose high in the sky, Ethan Cole looked at the palace, at the soldiers, and at Liara, knowing that his presence mattered. He had chosen to stay, not because he was commanded, not because he was bound, but because he understood that courage was an act of the heart, a decision that could echo across stars. And in that choice, he had truly become the human the galaxy had not expected and could never forget.